Our journey begins at Q Park Liverpool One Car Park, right in the heart of Liverpool. From here, it is only a short walk towards the waterfront and the Royal Albert Dock. Today, this historic dock is one of Liverpool's best-known attractions, but the waterfront also gives us our first sense of a city whose name would eventually become inseparable from one of the most famous bands in the world. Walking along the waterfront, we pass the Royal Liver Building, one of Liverpool's great landmarks. Nearby, facing the River Mersey, we find four familiar figures walking together: John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr. The Beatles Statue has become one of the most popular photographic spots in the city, and today it is certainly busy. Visitors gather around the four bronze figures, each waiting for a photograph with the band that carried the name of Liverpool around the world. From the waterfront, we continue past the Port of Liverpool building and make our way into the city centre. Our next destination is Mathew Street, and this is where the atmosphere changes completely. The quiet openness of the waterfront gives way to narrow streets, music, pubs, signs, and crowds. Everywhere we look, there seems to be another reminder of Liverpool's musical past. Here we find names such as Sgt Peppers and Rubber Soul appearing above pubs and bars, borrowing their identity from the music of the Beatles. There is also a statue of Sir George Martin, the legendary producer whose work with the Beatles was so important that he was sometimes described as the fifth Beatle. Even decades after the band separated, their presence remains deeply woven into this part of Liverpool.
And at the centre of Mathew Street is perhaps the most famous stop of all, the Cavern Club. The original club opened here in 1957, and the Beatles went on to perform at the Cavern hundreds of times during the early years of their career.
The present-day Cavern is not quite the original venue, but for Beatles fans from around the world, Mathew Street remains an essential place to visit. Standing here, it is remarkable to think that a band which would eventually fill stadiums and transform popular music once performed in a small underground Liverpool club. We now leave the city centre and drive south to a name recognised around the world, Penny Lane. Before visiting Liverpool, Penny Lane may simply be the title of a Beatles song. But here it is an ordinary Liverpool street, surrounded by traffic, shops, houses, and people going about their daily lives. Paul McCartney and John Lennon knew this area from their younger years, and those everyday memories eventually found their way into music.
Of course, we wanted to photograph the famous original Penny Lane street sign. But there was a small problem. The sign is now protected behind a transparent cover, and reflections from the glass make it surprisingly difficult to photograph clearly. Sometimes traveling to a famous location does not quite produce the perfect picture we imagine, but perhaps that is part of seeing the real place rather than an image prepared for visitors. From Penny Lane, we drive towards another name made famous by the Beatles, Strawberry Field. On the way, the signs begin to tell us that we are getting closer, and then the famous red gates finally appear. Strawberry Field was originally a Salvation Army children's home near John Lennon's childhood home. As a boy, Lennon would visit the grounds and attend events here. Those childhood memories later inspired Strawberry Fields forever. The original gates became so famous that replicas now stand at the entrance, while the historic originals have been preserved. And there is something rather wonderful about these gates. Strawberry Field even offers replicas inspired by them, allowing this instantly recognizable piece of Liverpool to travel far beyond the city. In a way, that seems appropriate. The Beatles themselves began here in Liverpool, but their music traveled to almost every corner of the world. What began with four young men in an ordinary northern English city became something extraordinary. A small underground club became part of music history. An everyday street became Penny Lane.
Childhood memories became strawberry fields forever.
And perhaps that is what we discover by following the Beatles through Liverpool. Behind some of the most famous names in popular music are surprisingly ordinary places, streets, houses, clubs, and childhood memories. You do not have to be a Beatles expert to appreciate them. You only have to walk through Liverpool, look around, and imagine what began here. From the waterfront to Mathew Street, from Penny Lane to the red gates of Strawberry Field, Liverpool allows us to see the places behind the music. And after visiting them for ourselves, perhaps the next time we hear those familiar names in a Beatles song, we will picture not only the music, but the city and the stories that inspired it.